a Cherokee Legend. This was written by K. Thorpe Bannon, but it is retold by Robert H. Bushyhead. It was illustrated by Christina Radanis. The reason why I'm sharing this with you is because this is an important legend, sometimes known as fables, that historically came from the Cherokee Native American tribe. This week in your Odyssey Where lessons, you have been learning about the differences between a moral, which is a very important part of a legend, and themes. This story, to me, is a great example of how the author uses a moral, and this story also has several themes emerging throughout it. So as I read aloud to you, I would like for you to stop and think to yourself, what are the themes? We had worked on themes all year in third grade. So think about those. I had all the posters posted under the Ask Questions large lettering on the wall, if you can think about that. And then a moral is clearly stated at the end of a story. So this may or may not have had a moral. Okay, the author sometimes just goes right out there and says it at the end of the story. But check to see if that is true. Now, I added, before you read, I'm thinking about what is a legend. Just think about that. I'd like you to also think about what traits does a strong leader possess. We had highlighted habits of leadership and habits of highly effective kids this school year. Think about, what do these leaders have? What do leaders have in common? Now, during our reading, I'd like you to think about, what did Black Bear do? There was a gentleman named Black Bear. We're going to find out why they're named Black Bear. What did Gray Wolf do? And what did Soaring Eagle do? This story, we touched on this right before our closure, about the magic three. Sometimes in legends, fables, stories, authors use the magic three. Usually there are elements of three. In this story, we have three men who are striving to become the chief of their village. So, magic three. After you read, I'd like you to think about what was learned from this legend. In other words, were there morals? And as the reader, I'd like you to name themes of the text. Okay, so I would like to begin, and before I begin, close read the illustration. What does the illustration show us? Would you like to be in this place? Is this taking place today? Is it taking place in the future, a long time ago? Yonder Mountain, a Cherokee Legend. I like this book so much, I actually bought a copy for myself and for my home kids and for my third graders as I head back to school. Once in the land of the Cherokee people, there lived a beloved chief called Sky. Chief Sky had seen many summers and winters. He had led his people through long seasons of peace. He had seen their warriors go through great battles with enemies. But now, his step was slow, and his hand trembled on the bow. He could no longer spot Brother Deer among the trees, he was no longer able to lead his people. One day, in the season of falling leaves, the chief called 3 young men to him and said, "One of you will take my place and become chief and lead our people. But first, I must put you to the test." Chief Sky turned slowly, looking into the distance. "Do you see yonder mountain?" The 3 young men followed the gaze of their chief and saw a great mountain rising out of the mist in the distance. "Yes," they answered, "we see the mountain." Chief Sky pointed toward the highest peak. "I want you to go to the mountain top. Bring back to me what you find there." The first young man, called Black Bear, quickly started up the side of the mountain. After the sun reached the middle of the day, Black Bear came to a wide place in the trail where he stopped to rest. He leaned his head upon a rock and his eyes grew heavy. Just as his eyes were closing, he caught sight of 1,000 lights twinkling in the sun. Black Bear sat up straight and saw stones of great beauty lining each side of the trail. They sparkled and glowed in the sunlight. Black Bear examined a stone, carefully turning it over and over in his hand and watching the sun dance on each surface. "If my people had these stones, they would never be hungry again," he said. "We could trade them for food and our lives would be better." Black Bear gathered many sparkling stones and ran down the mountain and back to his village. The people saw him coming and lined the path as he entered the village. The children pointed to the sparkling stones and said, "See the pretty stones Black Bear has found." Black Bear handed the stones to Chief Sky and said, "My chief, look what I have found. Beautiful stones. We can trade them for food and will never go hungry. We will be safe through many winters." The chief smiled fondly upon the young man and said, "You have done well, my son. You have done well. Let us now wait for the others." The second young man, called Gray Wolf, climbed the mountain and went past the place of the sparkling stones. He climbed higher and higher. The trail became steep and rugged. Finally, he came to an open place where he rested beside the trail. As Gray Wolf leaned against a rock, he saw herbs, roots, and bark on each side of the trail. He picked an herb, looking closely at its pointed leaves and long roots. "These are the healing plants of our medicine man," he said. "If my people have these herbs and roots, they will no longer be sick and suffer. We could be healed with these plants." Gray Wolf gathered one of each of the plants and hurried down the mountain. The people saw him coming and lined the pathway. The children waved and the elders said, "See all the herbs Gray Wolf has found. We will never be sick again." Gray Wolf ran to his chief and spread the plants before him. "Look, my chief, what I have found. We no longer need to suffer. I have found all kinds of herbs and we can be healed." The old chief smiled fondly at Gray Wolf and said, "You have done well, my son. You have done well. Now let us wait for Soaring Eagle, our last young man." They waited Days went by, and Soaring Eagle did not return. Still the village waited. After 6 days, the people began to murmur. Something must have happened to Soaring Eagle. Why wait any longer? But Chief Sky said to his people, We will wait 1 day longer. And so they waited. On the 7th day, as the sun cast its long shadow over the village, the people saw Soaring Eagle coming. He stumbled with bleeding feet. His clothes were ripped and torn. He held nothing in his hands. The people were quiet as Soaring Eagle fell at the feet of the chief, his chief. Soaring Eagle spoke softly to Chief Sky. I went to the top of the mountain, my chief, but I will bring back nothing in my hand. I passed a place where there were sparkling stones, but I remembered you said to go to the top of the mountain. I passed a place where all sorts of herbs grew, but I remembered your words. The path was rough. There were great cliffs and sharp rocks. I have nothing in my hands to show you, but I bring back a story from the top of the mountain. The old chief put his hand on the shoulder of the young man. Tell us your story, my son. Soaring Eagle began. As I stood on yonder mountain and looked across the valley, and beyond the farthest mountain, I saw a smoke signal. It was a signal for help. The signal said, We are dying, and then come and help us. Soaring Eagle rose to his feet. Chief Sky, he pleaded, we need to go to them quickly. They are in trouble. Chief Sky stood straight before his people and the 3 young men. There's magic 3 again. Pausing for a time, he lifted his eyes to the mountains and watched the mist settle on the peaks. He then turned to his people and spoke. We need a leader who has climbed to the top of the mountain. We need one who has seen beyond the mountain to other people who are in need. Now, let's stop and think. Who deserves to become chief? The people watched as Chief Sky carefully began to remove his robe. Now, this was a big deal in their culture, in their village. Coats were a symbol of power and strength and leadership. He turned to face Soaring Eagle. You, my son, shall wear the chief's robe, the beloved old leader declared. Chief Sky placed the robe over the torn clothing of the chosen young man. You shall be our next chief, Soaring Eagle. You will lead our people and help those in need. Yes, you will be our chief and help us climb yonder mountain. Now take a look at this illustration and close read. What do you see? What's soaring? Do we see an eagle? This book includes at the back of the book a glossary to show how English words were translated in Cherokee. So if you would like to look back at that. After reading, I'd like you to now think about, what did Black Bear do? What did Gray Wolf do? What did Soaring Eagle do? As the reader, what did the author teach us? In other words, what was the moral? As the reader, what were themes from the text? We're going to use this for our morning meeting this morning.